Nonye was a very pretty lady. She was the first daughter of her parents. Nonye lived in a small village far away from urban areas. Growing up as a child, she has had a lot of suitors seeking her hand in marriage. Nonye's mother was a very humble woman from a humble background, whereas her father was the complete opposite of her mother. He saw nonye as a very expensive market that needed to be traded at a very high price. Out of all the men that seeked nonye hand in marriage, she was in love with a particular man, but her father rejected him because he wasn't rich. Nonye's father was born into a wealthy family, but his father lost all his wealth due to his extreme greediness. Nonye's grandfather was an extremely greedy person. So, like father, like son. Nonye's father was a very greedy and lazy man. Instead of working hard to make ends meet, he'll always stray out to the village square every day to drink palm wine, thus making Nonye's mother the breadwinner of the family. Seeing that Nonye was a very pretty girl and had a lot of suitors, her father decided to use her as a gambling chip. He made a rule that whoever that wants to marry, his daughter will fulfill the following: build him a new house, buy him a new car, place him on a monthly allowance. All he knew was just himself. None of the suitors matched any of this, so they were all rejected. Initially, Nonye was unbothered about the rejected suitors, because she didn't like any of them. The only time she felt hurt was when her father rejected the only man she ever loved. She wept, all to no avail. One day, Nonye went to the bush to bring firewood. On her way back, she came across an unfamiliar man asking for directions to a particular place. Nonye innocently directed him. The man was very appreciative and offered her some money as a token of appreciation. Nonye rejected the money. I just did what I was meant to do. It's nothing. The man was very thrilled. He has never met somebody that humble all his life. The next day, Nonye went out again to the bush to bring firewood. On her way back home, she could sight a car parked in the compound. As she drew nearer, she could hear voices and laughter from the parlor. The voices were familiar. She recognized her father's voice, and was trying to recognize the other voice she was hearing as she was still outside. She took a quick glance back at the car parked outside and recognized it as the car she came across yesterday. She quickly left that spot and went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. After preparation, she dished out the food onto plates to serve, thinking that the visitor has gone home. As she approached the parlor, she could still hear their chatter and voices. She had no other choice but to just enter inside and serve the food. As she was about to leave, her father called her back and introduced the visitor to her. He said, "His name is Chief Alex. He was impressed by your help yesterday and would love to seek your hand in marriage." Nonye was speechless at the sudden proposal. Her father assured Chief Alex that his daughter Nonye would definitely marry him. By the way, she has no choice. She has to marry whoever I recommend, her father thought. The next week, Chief Alex commenced the building of a mansion in Nonye's home. He bought Nonye's father a car. The next month, Chief Alex came to fulfill the marital rites, but Nonye's father valiantly refused. He insisted that the mansion must be completed before any other thing happens. Chief Alex was unhappy but had to succumb to the decision. Chief Alex was a very wealthy businessman that resides in town. He was an importer-exporter that controlled millions of money and multiple businesses. The day he met Nonye was the day he came to pay a visit to his parents. He missed his way, and Nonye was the only person he saw that day that directed him. He picked interest in Nonye because of the way she attended to him. The mansion was completed within 6 months, and the marriage plans commenced. Chief Alex and Nonye got married a week after the mansion was completed. It was a very wealthy and luxurious wedding that the whole village never ceased to talk about. After the marriage ceremony, Nonye reallocated to join her husband in town. Nonye didn't really love her husband. She just saw him as a good man that respected her. When Nonye arrived at her husband's house, she was welcomed warmly and served a very good dish by the househelp. Days rolled into weeks, weeks into months, and months years. Nonye was in the 3rd year of her marriage with nothing to show for it. No child, let alone pregnancy. She was depressed still, yet her husband kept on supporting and encouraging her. Nonye was a housewife. She had access to everywhere in the house except her husband's study room. Her husband warned her sternly about his study room. According to him, it's his place of meditation and where he reads. One day, Nonye was extremely bored. She suddenly became extremely curious about the room. She just wanted to take a quick look and admire the books there. As she approached the door and gripped the handle, she noticed that it was locked. She started searching for the key in his drawers. As she found the key, opened the door and was about to enter the room, her cell phone rang. It was her husband. She was shocked at the coincidence. She answered the call, and the first thing her husband asked was, "Where are you?" She answers and said, "In your room," before he could say any other thing. She ended the call, quickly locked the study, and left the room. That day, her husband came back earlier than usual. He sternly asked her what she was doing in his room. Nonye has never witnessed her husband being that extremely angry. She confessed that curiosity got a better part of her and made her want to enter his study room. She pleaded that she was extremely bored. She also pleaded with him to let her get a job as she was always bored. Chief Alex cooled down. Then he said, "You're free to access anything I own, including my bank account. You're also free to access anywhere in this house. But you see my study room. Stay clear off it. As for boredom, you can invite your mother and younger sister over to spend some days with you." The next day, Chief Alex sent his driver to go bring Nonye's mother and sister. Nonye's mother spent 2 weeks with her and went back to the village. Meanwhile, her sister stayed back to keep Nonye company. Nonye's sister's name was Yugo. She was like Nonye, pretty, curious, and adventurous. One evening, Yugo was randomly strolling round the whole house. When she came across the study room, Nonye told her that no one was allowed to enter there. Yugo found it ridiculous. What kind of crazy rule is that, she thought. Being a curious person, Yugo made up her mind that she must see what was inside the room. 2 days later, she searched for the key and made her way into the room. Nonye was becoming worried because she hasn't seen her sister all day. She called her husband to tell him that Yugo was missing. Her husband tried to calm her down. "Maybe she stepped out to get something," he said. Nonye was restless throughout the day. The next day, there was still no sign of her. Nonye was becoming scared because she obviously doesn't know anywhere in that town. She didn't go home because her bags were still at Nonye's place. So, where could she have gone? 2 days later, there was still no sight of her. Her husband kept on to comfort her and promised to involve the police. On the 3rd day of Yugo's disappearance, Nonye couldn't contain her worries any longer. She went down on her knees and started praying fervently. After praying for hours, she was bored and decided to take a stroll round the whole house and receive fresh air, because she needed something to distract her from what she was passing through. As she was on the stroll, she remembered her husband's study room. Nonye decided to take a look. A sudden boldness came upon her. She didn't even care about the stern warning her husband gave her. Nonye witnessed the greatest shock of her life when she entered the room. The room was a very fetish-looking room with statues of gods and red, black, and white cloth everywhere. It was looking very scary. There were human skeletons arranged at the corners of the room. Blood was sprinkled at the corners of the room. In the center of the room was a huge calabash. Inside the calabash was blood. It was filled with blood. Nonye froze for some time as she was trying to process what she just saw. At a far end of the room, she sighted her sister's slippers. She hoped it wasn't what she was thinking. As she moved closer and picked up Yugo's slippers, her eyes quickly caught a little door as she stood up. She advanced towards the door, opened it, then boom. She screamed and trembled at what she saw. She saw human bodies hanged. She saw human parts butchered as meat. She covered her mouth in shock. She was shivering as she walked through the scary room. She let out a very loud scream when she saw Yugo's dead body wrapped up in a sack. She wept and cried. As she was trying to drag out the body from the room, her husband came in. He fiercely asked her what she was doing there. Nonye quickly grabbed a knife in self-defense. As he was trying to approach her, Nonye yelled at him not to come close to her. He said, "Nonye, I need you to calm down and listen to me, okay?" But Nonye lamented and said, "How could you do this to me? How could you use my sister for ritual? How could you?" she cried, as Chief Alex was trying to get close to Nonye and collect the knife from her. Nonye stabbed him, thinking that he wanted to kill her. Nonye couldn't believe what just happened. She ran out of the house and called her parents and police officers. During the investigation, it was discovered that Chief Alex was a ritualist and human trafficker that sold human body parts.